The United States Congress has formally validated Joe Biden's presidential election victory. Uruguay will extend travel restrictions until late January to curb COVID-19 spreading. And also, Japan's COVID-19 cases single-day report surpassed 6,000 on Wednesday, with government considering to place the nation under an emergency state. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. The U.S. Congress has formally validated Joe Biden's presidential election victory on a day that saw a time-honored ceremony become a nightmare of unprecedented political terror. The House and Senate certified the Democrats' Electoral College win overnight early Thursday after a violent throng of pro-Trump rioters spent hours running rampant through the Capitol. A woman was fatally shot, windows were smashed, and the mob forced shaken lawmakers and aides to flee the building, shielded by the Capitol Police. Biden defeated Trump by 306 votes to 232 electoral votes and will be inaugurated on January 20th.
The electoral vote of the state of Vermont seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Joseph R. Biden, Jr. of the state of Delaware received 3 votes for president, and Kamala D. Harris of the state of California received 3 votes for vice president.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of the vote of the state of Vermont that the teller has verified as regular in form and authentic?
The report we make is that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will be the president and the vice president according to the ballots that have been given to us.
And also, several of Donald Trump's personal advisors and inner circle members have quitted their positions after the violent events that stormed the Capitol on Wednesday in Washington, D.C. Matt Pottinger, Donald Trump's deputy national security advisor, has resigned, as well as the national security advisor, Robert O'Brien, and the deputy chief of staff, Chris Lindahl, are considering to resign. So far, 6 officials associated with Trump explicited their departure from the outgoing president's staff, including members of Melania Trump's team, after an angry pro-Trump mob violently took the Congress building to sabotage the vote to certify Joe Biden's victory in November presidential elections. And in the light of the latest events and the violent events led by pro-Trump violent mobs, Twitter and Facebook blocked the official accounts of the outgoing U.S. president. According to Twitter statements, the blocking of Trump profile was due to risk of violence. In line with our civic integrity policy and recent guidance, we have placed a label on the tweet and have significantly restricted engagement with the tweet due to the risk of violence, a Twitter spokesperson said. This means this tweet will not be able to be replied to, retweeted, or liked. Facebook took similar actions to prevent further violence incitements, including the removal of a presidential post. Guy Rosen, Facebook's vice president of integrity, said in a tweet, "This is an emergency situation and we are taking appropriate emergency measures, including removing President Trump's video." And he also said, "We remove it because on balance, we believe it contributes to rather than diminishes the risk of ongoing violence." As his supporters gathered on Wednesday to protest the certification of the 3rd November election results, Trump, in a tweet, accused Vice President Mike Pence of lacking the courage to do what should have been done. In the video he shared on social media late in the day, Trump urged his supporters to go home, but once again he called the election stolen and told the angry mob, "We love you." And now let's have a look at some reactions made by world leaders about the situation in the U.S. Boris Johnson posted on his Twitter account his opinion on the situation that the U.S. is facing, commenting, "Disgraceful scenes in the U.S. Congress. In the United States stands for democracy around the world, and it is now vital that there should be a peaceful and orderly transfer of power." And from France, we have Jean-Yves Le Drian, Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs, expressing, "The violent acts against the American institutions are a grave attack against democracy. I condemn them. The American people will and vote must be respected." And the Secretary General of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, commented on Twitter, "Shocking scenes in Washington, D.C. The outcome of this democratic election must be respected," stating that the country should not be going through this and they should respect the outcome of the elections. From Colombia, we have the President Iván Duque saying, "Colombia has full confidence in the stability of the institutions of the United States of America, as well as for its respect for democracy and the rule of law, values shared by our countries since the beginning of our republic." Meanwhile, in Argentina, the President Alberto Fernández posted, "We express our condemnation of the serious acts of violence and the outrage of Congress that occurred today in Washington, D.C. We trust that there will be a peaceful transition that respects the popular will, and we express our strongest support for the President-elect Joe Biden." Also, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Venezuela issued a communique stating, "The government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela expresses its concern with the acts of violence that are taking the city of Washington in the United States. Venezuela condemns the political polarization and the spiral of violence that only reflects the deep crisis that the political and social system of the United States is currently going through. With this unfortunate episode, the United States is suffering the same thing that it has generated in other countries with its policies of aggression. Venezuela hopes that soon the violence will cease and the American people can finally open a new path towards stability and social justice." And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go. Welcome back. Uruguay President Luis Lacalle Pou announced an extension of travelers' entry restrictions to the country, which includes national and residents until January 30th in an effort to try to contain an increase in COVID-19 cases.
Unfortunately, and much to our regret, and especially for the Minister of Tourism, we're going to continue with the border closed for 20 more days. We will do an evaluation in 10 days. We want to follow up closely the contagion curve, so this ban will be extended for 20 more days. We signed the appropriate decree a few moments ago.
The President of Argentina, Alberto Fernández, led a meeting with several governors to analyze the health situation due to a rise in COVID-19 infections. Fernández and the local government officials made a video conference about the health situation in each territory and proposed a curfew between 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Measures to prevent the spread of the virus include the possible closure of international flights, the prohibition of meetings with more than 10 people, and the requirement of a PCR test when someone arrives in any province. And Mexico City residents and relatives of COVID-19 patients queued for refills the oxygen tanks offered by the local government this Wednesday. Mexico granted the emergency authorization for the use of the COVID-19 vaccine developed by the AstraZeneca lab and the University of Oxford on Monday. As of Wednesday, Mexico had reported over 1.4 million COVID-19 cases and almost 129,000 fatalities.
As long as my brother has oxygen on, I will stay here, because if at the end of the day, between spending and spending, we already have about 10,000 pesos on tests, medication, consultation and oxygen. It's a form of support that people need. Without this support, it would be very, very difficult. This is better than going to the hospital. In the hospital, I believe that this way we also avoid crowding of the hospital. We are helping in that way. There was always oxygen. Obviously, the price has increased since the start of the pandemic.
On Wednesday, the President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, said his government will guarantee vaccines against COVID-19 to undocumented migrants in the United States. After Nebraska Governor Pete Ricketts claimed that migratory residents will probably not be vaccinated for their status, the President of Mexico spoke in defense of the rights of the citizens so that migrants can access the shot. López Obrador said that the vaccine should be supplied to all people as universal right. Roberto Velasco, the Director General for North America of the Mexican Foreign Ministry, said during a statement, "Depriving undocumented essential workers of vaccination goes against basic human rights." The President of Peru, Francisco Sagasti, announced on Wednesday the signing of agreements with Chinese pharmaceutical company Sinopharm and also AstraZeneca for the acquisition of COVID-19 vaccines. The President reported that a first batch of 1 million vaccines from the Chinese company will arrive in the country in the month of January. The government affirmed that with the signing of contracts, the country will receive at least 38 million doses of vaccines produced by Sinopharm and another 14 million doses of the British laboratory AstraZeneca. Sagasti emphasized that while negotiation with vaccine suppliers, the government is preparing for the mass distribution and application of the antidote in the coming month.
I can announce that we have completed the purchase of the first batch of the expected pandemic vaccine under an agreement with China's Sinopharm laboratory to purchase 38 million doses. We have just signed a purchase agreement and commitment letter to receive a first shipment of 1 million doses that will arrive during the month of January.
And the President of Ecuador, Lenín Moreno, announced on Wednesday that the first vaccines against COVID-19 will arrive in the country on January the 8th. The President explained that the first shipment has 50,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccines and will be administered frontline workers, which includes medical personnel, officials and military who have direct contact with citizens. The delivery of vaccines will take place weekly until the arrival of the second shipment scheduled to arrive in March and complete the 2 million doses. The head of state also said that the nation has 400 points distributors and 10,000 destined for the vaccination day. And this Wednesday, the European Union announced that it no longer recognized Venezuelan opposition figure Juan Guaidó as interim president of the country. The High Representative of the EU for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Josep Borrell, announced that the bloc will cease to recognize the former Venezuelan lawmaker and will maintain contacts with all the political actors in the country. Borrell pointed out that the European Union will not support the extension of Guaidó's mandate as president of the outgoing National Assembly and therefore is the apparent president in charge. He urged Venezuelan authorities and their leaders to work to prioritize the interests of the Venezuelan people in order to overcome the political crisis, which has been deepened by the economic blockade imposed by Washington. And the Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro Moros received a commission appointed by the new National Assembly this Wednesday, thus initiating the work agenda within the context of a new political cycle in the country. The head of state noted that with the installation of the new National Assembly, a new political era begins, on which he hopes to reunite Venezuelans in order to tackle the most pressing issues and needs of the country and to seek points of convergence and dialogue. President Maduro welcomed the opposition lawmakers who were elected to parliament and expressed his full willingness to work together with the National Assembly to overcome the crisis and also to seek peaceful coexistence in the interest of the Venezuelan people. And we have more news coming up after this final short break, so stay with us.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Sean todos muy bienvenidos a Vidas. Hay lugares donde el arte se unifica con el orgullo de los pueblos. Y esos lugares están llenos de colores, alegría, pasión, tradiciones, arraigo, valor y entrega.
Real Life. Fridays. Only on teleSUR. A review of the world news that investigates, incites analysis and induces criticism, because every event has a context.
Pusimos el punto net.
Dot in the eye. Saturday. Only on teleSUR.
Welcome back to From the South. Japan on Wednesday reported 6,004 new COVID-19 cases, with the newly confirmed cases in a single day topping 6,000 for the first time. The caseload surpasses over 1,000 the toll reported on Tuesday. The government is to decide whether to declare a state of emergency for Tokyo and 3 of its neighboring prefectures on Thursday. Multiple regions in Japan saw the daily infections hitting record on Wednesday, such as 1,591 in Tokyo and 364 in Aichi Prefecture. Tokyo and its neighboring prefectures have seen increasing new cases since the end of 2020, and the rising trend of the pandemic has spread over the whole country, resulting in a record high of infections, according to experts in the Japanese government. Japan reported 80,000 new cases in December, 1.5 times the new cases in November. The World Health Organization warned on Wednesday that the COVID-19 pandemic could last at least 6 months before vaccines are able to reverse global infections. WHO experts were concerned about the health situation in several countries that report thousands of new cases of contagion on a daily basis. They further noted that the new SARS-CoV-2 strain spreads faster than its previous evolution, so they did not rule out a new wave of contagions with greater aggressiveness. Regarding vaccines, the international organization remains optimistic with the start of inoculation processes against the virus in Europe and some countries in South America. However, they advise governments to not lower their guard. And the Syrian army anti-aircraft defense units on Wednesday night repelled the Israeli regime's missile attack on towns in southern Syria. According to local media, Israel launched several missiles from occupied Syrian Golan airspace towards positions south of Damascus. For its part, the Syrian government denounced that the Tel Aviv regime has launched several attacks against its national territory under the pretext of attacking Iranian and Hezbollah targets, with the support of the United States and the immunity offered by the UN Security Council to some of its members. The International Rescue Committee, IRC, reported that more than 6,000 refugees from Ethiopia fled to Sudan after the beginning of the conflict in the region of Tigray, in the northeast of the African country. The international body said that it is currently working with Sudanese authorities to attend the recently established camps in Rakuba and Tendba. The organization also said that half of the refugees are less and that in the majority they travel alone. The conflict began on early November when the Liberation Front of the People of Tigray attacked the command of the National Force of Ethiopia in that locality. In that sense, the Rescue Committee emphasized the need to cease hostilities. In the Central African Republic, more than half of the candidates who ran in the presidential elections last December demanded that the country's constitutional court to annul the results that re-elected President Archange Touadéra. The formal application was introduced by 10 of the presidential candidates within hours of being ratified Touadéra by the National Election Authority. According to the electoral body, the re-elected president will have won the elections with 53.9% of the vote, while the opposition candidates have denounced fraud during the last elections. The complaints include the alleged permissiveness of the National Elections Authority before the voting of voters in electoral districts different from those where they were registered. And Jordan's foreign minister calls for Arab states to be represented in future dialogue on the Iranian nuclear program, days after Tehran moved to step up its uranium enrichment.
Jordan supports the launching of dialogue with Iran on the nuclear issue and believes that states in the region must be represented in any future dialogue on the subject.
Zimbabwe has witnessed an increase in COVID-19 infections and deaths amid the start of a second national lockdown, the Deputy Health Minister announced at a press briefing.
Of deaths as of the 5th of January 2021 is now at total deaths is 418 now, all the cases. As of the 5th of January 2021, the total number of cumulative cases is 17,194.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.
Follow the most important global events through a comprehensive perspective. With a team of journalists in 25 locations.